Okay, we're going to get started. I just want to say hi. It's so great to see so many amazing faces in this room today. Before I introduce myself and our amazing panel for how to advocate both online and off, I just want to say if you have a question, I am going to prompt you in the middle of the panel, and you can raise your hand, and someone will bring you a note card, okay? That's how we're going to do questions in here. I'm Lindsay Pinchuk. I am an entrepreneur, I'm a marketer, I am the host of Dear Found Her, which is a top 0.5% podcast, and thank you. And I am also an accidental activist. On October 8th, 2023, I was in the parking lot of Whole Foods, and I created a video about how I felt being a Jewish American woman after October 7th, immediately after October 7th, and I posted it. And I drove 7 minutes back to my house, not even. And by the time I'd gotten home, it had amassed 100,000 views. And it was very evident in that moment that we needed to be speaking up and speaking out. And that was really my call to action. And I have showed up online every single day since. And so today with me to help share all of our tips for speaking up and speaking out, I have all the way down at the end, Alyssa Rosenheck. First of all, before I get into this, I just want to say these three up here have become dear friends of mine. They're what I call silver linings. And in this horrible, hard, dark time, there are so many of them, not just up here, but many in this room, who have been advocating tirelessly with all of us, and they really are the bright spots of all of this. So Alyssa Rosenheck is a best-selling author, advocate, and one of Architectural Digest's top 50 interior and architectural photographers in the United States. Her debut book, The New Southern Style, showed how creativity can humanize our differences, reminding us that we are far more alike than different. Her forthcoming book, make sure you pre-order it, I already did. It's called White Blonde Jew, releasing August 2026, is a necessary call to end extremism, speak truth, and reclaim center. Alyssa is a leading voice in the fight against anti-Semitism in the Southeast and a fierce advocate for Israel, honored with the 2025 Hero Against Hate Award from the ADL and a founding member of Artists Against Anti-Semitism. Since October 7th, she has traveled to Israel multiple times, engaged with global leaders, helped withdraw BDS resolutions at the city level, and continues to write and use her lens to equip communities to defend truth and democratic values. Next to her is Benji Rosenzweig, hailing from my hometown of Detroit. Benji is a commercial real estate broker by trade, but wears a lot of hats. He's a special needs dad who advocates in that community, including a TEDx speaker, a podcaster, consultant, and public speaker. He also supports sober music fans in nurturing sober spaces with nationally touring bands, and only started advocating for the Jewish community in Israel after October 7th, including starting a nonprofit program called Storied, which you all should look up, which produces live shows, a podcast, and now a school curriculum looking at where Jews and Jewish community collaborate and contribute to bands or genres of music. And then last but certainly not least, my friend Brandon Farbstein, who is to my left. Brandon is a globally recognized speaker, activist, and author whose work on inclusion, belonging, and human connection has made him one of the most impactful voices of his generation. Born with an extremely rare form of dwarfism, he transformed personal adversity into a platform for change, championing landmark anti-bullying and empathy-based education legislation by the age of 18. Today, he speaks to audiences around the world and partners with leading brands while amplifying the voices of the disability community. Through his books, advocacy, and signature message to elevate empathy, Brandon inspires people and organizations alike to challenge limitations, embrace authenticity, and create lasting change. And I just want to say before we get started, what we're talking about today is necessary now more than ever. Last Wednesday night, I had the honor and the privilege of speaking at Temple Israel in my hometown of West Bloomfield, Michigan. And the next morning, a psychopath Islamic jihadist terrorist rammed his car into the preschool that I attended as a child. And I think one would normally want to retreat and maybe be afraid to speak out. And I am telling you that this has made me want to speak out more than ever. And it is, thank you. And really and truly to echo the sentiments of my friend Stephen Ingber, who's the CEO of the Federation in Detroit, now is the time to be loudly and proudly Jewish. So to my panel, I'm going to have each of you tell me about the moment that you realized you had become an accidental activist. What was the incident that made you feel like silence for the Jewish community was no longer an option? And Alyssa, I'm going to start with you.
First, I just want to say thank you to the ADL, thank you to Lindsay, thank you for my fellow panelists, and thank you for everybody in this room. Fighting this level of misinformation and disinformation, it's a team sport, so look around the room, this is our team, and I'm really grateful to be here. I'm going to bring us all back to when I was in biology class in middle school. I was sitting next to somebody who lost her wallet, and she stood up in front of the entire class, and she pointed at me, and she goes, "The Jew took it." I know. So I get up. I'm not advocating for violence. I pushed her down. And I was sent to the headmistress office, so, and I got in trouble. And from that day forward, I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There wasn't a large Jewish community, and I learned to be very proud in who I was and where my roots come from and how deep they grew. Fast forward, I wrote my first book. It was a bucket list item for me. I photographed it as well, and it's all about humanizing our differences through the lens of creativity. And it published on the heels of George Floyd in 2020. And I was silenced in the media for immutable characteristics that I can't control, and I was confused until 2021 happened. And that is when my light bulb moment happened. I was watching the news, and Israel was being barraged with over 3,000 rockets from Gaza, targeting densely civilian populated areas. And I saw something significant happen in the United States. My peers with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers online, plus legacy media, started to conflate race with geopolitical issues that had nothing to do with race. And then that was my moment to get really curious and to learn about the BDS movement, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, to learn about how to combat and educate against anti-Semitism. So unfortunately, when the second largest massacre of Jewish bodies occurred on October 7th, I immediately knew the misinformation and disinformation that was going to ensue on October 8th. And just like oxygen, just like breathing, I went into education mode against anti-Semitism and advocating for the safety and security of the state of Israel.
Benji?
Well, thank you for having us, and before I answer the question, I just want to tell you that I appreciate you bringing up Temple Israel, and there's many people in the room who are members and participate and have had bar mitzvahs and classes there, and so it's near and dear and fresh to many of our hearts. As you mentioned when you were introducing me, I wear a lot of hats, and I'm used to being an advocate. I'm generally an advocate in the special needs community, in the recovery community. I did a lot of work in the real estate community, and I never talked about Judaism. I never talked about Israel online, not because I was an anti-Zionist. It just wasn't a priority on the list of things that I wanted to talk about. And on October 7th, on October 8th, on October 9th, I saw my friends in these spaces turn their profile pictures into paragliders with Palestinian flags. And I said, "What are you doing? You're an advocate. We go to concerts together, we go to music festivals together, and those paragliders murdered hundreds of people at a music festival. What are you doing?" And they said, "Don't worry, Benji. We're not coming after you. We're just coming after the bad ones." And I said, pardon my French, "Motherfucker, I'm one of the bad ones, right? I'm not one of the good ones." And that's when I realized that I had to say something, not to fight. I wasn't thinking about fighting anti-Semitism. I was thinking about my friends and their misconceptions. And I said, I need to say something so that my friends who are not getting good information have that. And every time I would post something, people would ask me, well, you're saying you're a Zionist, but Zionists are that. And I'd say, well, rather than responding in a DM, I'm going to post a video about that. And that snowballed. The moment, to answer the specific question, the moment that I realized that I was advocating was when a woman said to me, I'm really glad that you're saying that because I can't post those things because I'm afraid that I'm going to get fired. And I was like, well, I'm unfireable. Like if they fire me from this company, I'll go work at that's not my concern. And she said, well, keep doing that because I'm answering questions that I don't know how to answer with the information that you're posting. And I was like, okay, I guess that's what I'm doing now. So
Thank you.
That was the origin.
Brandon, I know you've been advocating your whole life, but when was it that it turned to the Jewish community?
Yeah, so I, similar to what Benji just shared, I didn't really intertwine my Judaism within my platform. Not in a way where I was hiding it or I was being ashamed, but I wasn't loud and proud, to use that term. And it was pretty late in the day on October 7th that the news came out that I had a personal connection with one of the hostages. And it ended up that Hirsch Goldberg Poland and I went to Chabad preschool together in Richmond, Virginia. And I hadn't seen him since we were both 5 years old. But that moment was the catalyst that I really saw myself in him. And I knew if the position was turned, he would be shouting from the rooftops to make everybody aware of what happened, and especially with the hostages, not even trying to share about October 7th more so than bring awareness to the hostages. That's what I was focused on. And it was really a sad response to see a lot of the community and the followers that I've built over the however many years of doing this work just kind of dropped like flies and felt like I betrayed them. But it's like the thoughts that I have about Israel, my Zionism, my Jewishness, have always been there. I just haven't been as loud or vocal per se, but that was the moment where I was like, there's no turning back.
Yeah. And I will add, my moment was when I posted that video that I just shared with you guys. But I had made a promise on the March of the Living in 1997, never forget. And it was really that moment when I posted the video at Whole Foods that I saw, like all of you guys, just the response. And similar to Brandon, so many lost followers. But I think we would all agree we have all more than made up for that over the last couple of years. All right, so Benji, I'd like for you to start with anti-Semitism isn't always obvious, and we know that. You and I talk about it all the time, actually. It can be coded or casual or disguised as humor or politics. So how did you learn to recognize it, and what sources have helped you out?
So that's a great question. The idea of anti-Semitism versus friends who are making jokes or people who are saying things that is not anti-Semitic but just makes you uncomfortable or off color, things like that. So I was having this conversation with Yuval David, and we were talking about, how do we differentiate? Because at the end of the day, there are things that are said that can make me uncomfortable that aren't necessarily anti-Semitic. And one of the major takeaways that I had was agency, right? So if two people are having a conversation and they say something and I'm able to step away or stop that conversation, right? That I have the agency to push back. That's different than a situation where somebody is forcing or pushing a conversation that I can't control. Forgive me, I'm going to point to Tessa in the room, who's now embarrassed, and I apologize, but Tessa's a perfect example who people were saying things to and about her that she had no agency to control, and that is where that becomes a fight that needs to be fought, and she did a brilliant job of that, and I'm going to stop embarrassing you, and I apologize. That is a perfect example where she didn't have the agency to stop that without doing something as dramatic as she did. But people talk about comedians making jokes, and is that anti-Semitic? That is a different conversation, than what is the painful or the dangerous anti-Semitism.
So
in my view.
As a follow-up to that, Alyssa, I would love for you to address kind of what do you do when someone says something that isn't so obviously anti-Semitic? How do you handle that?
When it's not so obvious?
I think there's a lot of anti-Semitism that we know as anti-Semitic, but they might not know as anti-Semitic. So how do you handle that kind of situation? And I think a lot of people in this room are in that situation all the time.
I'll share a story yesterday morning, traveling here, actually. I was sitting next to somebody who was incarcerated for 22 years, and he now works for the state of Tennessee in prison rehabilitation. And we started talking. He asked me what I did, and I shared my advocacy work and that I was also an author. And he shared, and I asked a lot of questions, and he is really into his making amends and rehabilitation. And then he started sharing some resources with me, and they happen to be really problematic for our community. Two things can coexist at the same time, right? So you can do great rehabilitation work for a community while also advocating harm for our community. And I shared specific incidences, and I led with my humanity. And he was on his way to the UN after he landed. And he's part of a fellowship program, too, of over 20 individuals across the country. And he wanted to share my testimony with them. And we were also talked about political Islam and the dangers of that within our Western democracy, and how the Islamic doctrine is growing within the prison system. And I asked him if there were anti-Semitic training programs within the prison system. And he connected me to program directors for the state of Tennessee. And so I think when things are a little more covert, underlining, and he was advocating for some governor candidates who are very pro-Palestinian, and you can be pro-community without advocating for a terrorist organization. And I led with my humanity. I'm not going to change people's world beliefs. That's not my goal. That's not a good use of our energy. But if we can lead with our humanity, we can really make sure that we're educated on these topics and we understand the importance of how they grow within our own local communities. That's the best way forward, and we find common ground. This individual and I we came from very different backgrounds. However, we left as friends, and we'll collaborate when I get back.
That's very interesting that you said that. Just last night I got home and I had a DM from a work friend an old work friend who I haven't seen in a while, and she shared a video with me, and she said, "I know this is a safe space." That's what she said to me. And I was so happy she said that, because that means I have created a safe space for people to reach out to me online. And she said, "And I know you're not going to judge me, but can you help me with this piece of content?" And it was a propaganda video with a Hasidic rabbi talking about Gaza and aligning with Gaza and not aligning with Zionists. And I sent her a voice note back explaining, and I said, "And I will answer any question you want." And she wrote me back this morning and she said, "Thank you so much. I probably will have more." And again, to what Alyssa said, it was not like coming down hard or pointing fingers, and I really try not to do that. It really is leading with humanity.
And curiosity.
Brandon, when someone in your personal circle, a friend or a coworker or a family member, shares something that's anti-Semitic, how have you approached the conversation without blowing up the relationship?
It's really tough. And the last 2.5 years, I'm sure for every single person in this room, we've all had different levels of this. For me, I think I try not only lead with compassion and curiosity, but I try and listen. And it sounds so simple and so fundamentally whatever, but that act of actually listening to somebody in today's world, with as much noise as we all deal with, it is so freaking hard, especially when you don't see the world in the same way. And so I think for me, it's honestly been trying to take a step back and come at these conversations from a place of I'm not, just like you said, Alyssa, I'm not trying to change your worldview. I'm just trying to share how I see things. And if that happens to make you reframe things, amazing. But if not, then go do your own thing.
Benji or Alyssa, do either of you have anything to add to that? I think that this is so important because this is really, I know for me, this is the question I get the most online, is how do I talk to people about this?
Go first.
I mean, I've lost community because of it, and I am also just in the mindset right now that that's okay. I'm going to leave the door open if they choose to come back, but I'm going to really pour into those who are around me, and we're going to build together in the present moment and forward. And if you want to be part of that, great, and if not, be well.
Yeah, those are two great answers. The only thing that I would add to that is, I don't have to show up to every fight that I'm invited to.
Yeah.
People can say things, and the things that we focus on grow. And so there are times when I say, you can think that, and I'm going to move and focus on the people that are supporting our community and building those bridges and having those conversations. And sometimes fighting anti-Semitism is identifying, pushing somebody over, right? Like sometimes there's that is a relevant part of the fight, and sometimes fighting anti-Semitism is showing up and doing a good job and being a mensch, and that's that's okay.
And in fact, Benji said to me last night, we just had this conversation last night. Someone tagged Benji in, I don't know, a post or a story, and they were trolling you. And you said, what should I do? Like, should I leave it unblocked or whatnot? And I said to him, do you really want this battle? I said, do you really want this person to be able to tag you? Like, just block them. Who cares? Like, we don't need to let that noise into our head. And I think it's so important what you just said, like, pick your battles, right? Like, we don't need to all be saving every single incident, and we also have to protect, and this goes for everyone in this room, we have to protect our own mental health and well-being.
Right.
So, what would you say, Alyssa, is the most effective thing you've ever said in one of these moments?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's what I've said. I think it's what I've done. I was part of the first wave of literary boycotts against Jewish authors and Israeli publishers soon after the war. I was writing a project about creativity that had nothing to do with my Jewish identity or the state of Israel. And I took a few months off and just really wrapped my head around things. And then I went to Israel for 2 months after the war started. And it was really important for me, my community. I'm like Jewish HGTV, so I have people both on the right and on the left. And it was important for me to bear witness and share the truth through my lens. And there was also a mobilization of community that happened. I want to recognize Zibby Owen. She's in the room right now. She's one of, and Allison, I don't know if Allison Hammer's in the room, but together and with Zibby's efforts, there was a spearhead of artists against anti-Semitism who were also greatly impacted from the literary boycotts. And so when they push you down, I believe you double down in truth. And I'll never forget that first trip to Israel. It was 4.5 days. We had over 20 meetings. And I was on the rooftop of the hostage forum overlooking Tel Aviv. It was one of the last days. And I was a guest on a group trip of about 30 people. And everybody was standing in a circle, and they said, what were your takeaways, and what are you willing to do? And I think action gives us agency. And so I get emotional, but I made a promise to that group. If I ever got another book deal, I would make sure it is historical insurance to time capture what we were all going through and to dedicate it to all the lights that were lost too soon and taken away from us. And so that is what I did in that moment of time, and I took action. And I think that's the biggest thing that we can take. Thank you. Again, it's a team sport. The community within Artists Against Anti-Semitism, my peers, all of us in this room, that's the fire that is the light within us all. And, our ancestors walked through fire and carried storms on their back, and we're not going to be complicit or silent in our own erasure. We're just not doing that. So
I also want to share, and some of you have heard me say this before, and I actually said it yesterday morning as well. One of the most effective strategies that I give to people often is I tell them what I call reach out your hand. And it's very important that you don't show up and like be combative with people, but that you show up, as we've all said, from a place of compassion and a place of education. I had a situation where I was the only Jewish person in amongst a bunch of moms at a tournament the weekend that all of the hostages were being released, and I was a mess. And I said to these moms, please pray that these hostages all get home safely. That was all I said. I reached out my hand, and it opened the door to really good conversation. And some of the best conversation, actually, I've had since October 7th. And now these are moms in my community who ask me questions. They feel like they can, because I didn't say, like, you, or no. And so it's really how you approach things. Brandon, how do you handle it when someone gets defensive or doubles down? Or do you keep pushing? Do you walk away? What do you do?
I think you have to really know yourself and know your own internal compass. For me, just kind of based on the life that I continue to live, I've developed that over time. I think, though, we all need to recognize when to walk away, and it's really, really tough. But it just goes back to, it is not our job, it is not our responsibility to try and convince somebody. We can only simply show up as ourselves in whatever capacity that is. And something I just really want to double down, because I see a ton of teens and young people in the room right now. I think so often, and this is coming from your Gen Zer on the stage. I'm
Thanks,
26. No. just saying. I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed at us being one person, one voice, in a sea of so many people. Who are we? I don't have tens of millions of followers. I don't have all this money. We could make up so many excuses. I passed 2 laws by my 18th birthday because I decided to speak up. I decided to use what I've been given and share my story. And I think that is universal for all of us, especially those of us who are equipped to be the future leaders. I hate when people are like, you're the next generation of leaders. No, that's BS. We're the now generation of leaders, and we're showing up. Clap for you.
I'm going to pause for a minute. If you guys think you have a question, raise your hand, and Aislyn's going to bring you a card and a pen, and then she'll come around and collect them, all right? Benji, do you think it's harder to confront anti-Semitism online or in person, and do you approach those situations differently?
Well, yes, I approach those situations differently, and I think it is a lot more difficult in person because you're looking at somebody in the face. It's really easy for strangers to type with their thumbs nasty things, right? But somebody saying those things to you means that they have the belief and the gumption to say that in person, and it's a completely different ballgame. Online, I don't argue with strangers online on their platforms because that's just helping their algorithm. I will occasionally goad people on my Instagram posts because, why not? But I almost don't take it seriously because I don't believe that anything that they're saying is something that they would say to my face. Conversations in person are a completely different story. When I'm having a conversation, and by the way, I think that the answer is, first of all, be yourself, right? So myself, my viewpoint and the way that I approach these conversations is stoic and factual with stories that are real and impactful and with facts and no emotions. I don't know if he's here in the room, but A.B. Hamra is here at this conference, right? He's the exact opposite of me. He waves his fists and he bangs on the table and he gets passionate and he screams, and that's amazing. We are two different people and we approach it so I think that the way to approach that is by being yourself and having those conversations, and in person, protect yourself because there's crazy people out there.
Yeah.
And Alyssa, as a follow-up to that, we all know that social media algorithms amplify hate. We know that. Have you found any effective strategies for responding publicly without feeding the beast?
I appreciate what the be yourself, but I am unhinged and I would end up in jail, I think. So,
Well, that's
so
my
I have to like
favorite
tone
version
it
of you.
down. Lies are traveling at least 6 times faster than the truth right now, especially online. And then after that has been debunked, the lie, 70% of those exposed to the lie still believe the lie. So I find it really effective to do bottom-up local civic advocacy. That is where I feel like most of my impact is made. It's offline. I don't argue online. I really try to channel that energy into knowing who my local Metro City Council members are, channeling it into withdrawing BDS resolutions when they cross my desk, which they do often, and really mobilizing a strong community so we can recognize best practices, blind spots, and how we can move forward together with stronger bridges.
Would you add a couple of things about how you've dealt with this on a local level, because you really have taken this offline in an amazing way and have made the world of difference in your community. And I would love for, I'm putting you on the spot, sorry, I would love for you to give a couple of tips to anyone who could go out into their local community and really make that difference too.
Thank you. I did not have any experience in local politics, by the way, and one of the first BDS resolutions crossed my desk 2 years ago, and I was like, why is this being sent to me? So I start asking questions. I start asking to be connected to the right people in the room, and I would ask this of everybody in this room. First of all, again, know who your Metro City Council members are, know who your state reps are, understand if your state has incorporated the definition of IRA for your state. In order to fight something, we have to understand how to define it. And then also recognize if you have anti-BDS legislation in your state. Those were the questions that I started to ask. And I was connected to my now good friend, dear mentor, who helped codify both IRA and anti-BDS for the state of Tennessee. And when this resolution came, I started looking at it. She was telling me about the local players in our state. And I did a reverse engineer Google search with this resolution. And it was directly tied to the US CPR, the US Campaign for Palestinian Rights. It's the largest BDS arm in North America. It represents over 300 BDS organizations that are alleged tax-exempt shelters for Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, bad actors in this world. And it was directly pulled from one of our Metro City Council members who sponsored it. So I did 2 things. At the time, I created a real educational, I believe that we are responsible for the energy that we're bringing online, so I try to make it calm and not enraging. And I made it resourceful while also mobilizing physical community in Nashville. I'm also involved in monthly Zooms with our Jewish leaders, community heads. I recommend and encourage everybody to see if there are monthly Zooms within your federation, within the ADL. It's really impactful. You get to listen. Brandon, you talk about listening. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who's one of my favorite luminaries in this world, may his memory continue to be a blessing. He says to listen is to lead. And that's what I started to do. I started to listen, and then I was able to lead within the community.
And I think it's important just to remember what Alyssa's saying, because the other question that I know all of us get all the time is like, but I don't have a big platform. It doesn't matter. Everyone plays a role. Like, everyone in this room has a role in fighting anti-Semitism. And so these are some of the places that you can get started and you can make a difference.
I want to add this. The ADL has great resources around BDS. Stand With Us has great resources around BDS. The AJC has great resources. The study of Political Islam International has great resources that are academic, non-polarizing, and really informative to start equipping how these ideologies are spreading within our own communities. And I encourage us, this was not work that I did online, this was work that I did offline that created a big impact in the community as a team sport. And so that's...
I'm going to ask you all this question, and Brandon, I'm going to start with you, but what's one thing that you wish someone had told you before your first really difficult conversation about anti-Semitism?
Just start. I think I historically thought that I needed to have all the answers. I needed to come equipped with everything first. But I think also recognizing that it's okay to say, I don't have the answer. I need to find that out. I need to look more into that. It's completely okay. And oftentimes I'm going to that when I don't have something that I know confidently that I will go out and say.
Benji?
What do I wish somebody would have told me when I started? I think I kind of wish somebody would say this to me every day. It's going to work out, right? It's going to work out. Sometimes I feel like, I was going to say our hair's on fire, but your hair's on fire. My proverbial hair's on fire. But like, sometimes it feels like overwhelming and you can't breathe and like, oh my God, the world's going to end. And in those moments, I need to take a step back and breathe and remember, like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow. I'm going to put my pants on. I'm going to, hopefully, function, and the world's going to keep spinning. And I think when I started, I'm sure you all remember October 7th and October 8th. It felt like the world was ending, and it was hard to breathe. And I really wish I had somebody who reminded me to breathe at that moment. And sometimes I watch his videos to remember to
Alyssa?
breathe.
Any sports teams have both offense and defense, and I think both are equally important to do simultaneously. So I think continuing to create and live joyful, full, aligned lives as human beings in this world is really important to build forward, while also being the voice in rooms filled with silence is also important, and educating yourselves to stand in truth and speak up and start, defending and advocating for our community. It's important. So both of those two things.
And I would add to tune out the noise. I really would. Like, just don't listen to the haters. Report, block, delete. Those are my 3 actions. Report, block, delete. End of story. You don't need people like that around you, and you don't need to engage with them. Thank you. I also want to ask each of you, and Benji, you kind of just touched upon this, but this work can be exhausting and demoralizing, but how do you sustain yourself and avoid burnout when it feels like an uphill battle? I'm going to have each of you answer, but I'm going to have Benji start.
Well, yes, I started with answering that accidentally before, but, how do I sustain myself? I think about my grandfather, who was one of 2 grandparents who were in Auschwitz, and the things that he endured and the things that he overcame and the life that he was able to build after. And he had a wife and 3 kids before the war. My grandmother was his second wife. My father was his first after the war. And he built a really beautiful life. And as overwhelming as this feels, like, my self-care, for lack of a better term, is thinking about, like, they went through crazy stuff, unimaginable, and they had a wonderful, wonderful life. And I'm grateful that I got to be a part of seeing them in their golden years. And I turn to that. It's really simple for me. I feel lucky to have had the relationship with my grandfather that I did. And that when I'm overwhelmed, that's one of the things that I sort of go back to. Like, it worked out for him. It's going to work out for me. Like, we'll get there.
Brandon?
I think it's really about choosing where you focus, because what you said before, where you put your focus, it's going to grow.
Right.
It's really just so vital right now more than ever, that we are all actively, not just talking about bubble baths and self-care and going on hikes or whatever, but genuinely doing something every single day that is in the practice of taking care of yourself. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Do like a 5-minute meditation on Calm or Headspace. I tell you from experience, you will see how your day is transformed. And then I also just want to double down on what you just said about blocking and deleting. It's so easy, but we forget that it's there sometimes. And that's where we literally are in the driver's seat of where we are allowing somebody else to have control or power over our life. And listen, I get hate comments nearly every single day, as you can imagine. So this is coming from somebody that has had to practice it for my own life. But you really have to choose where you are letting people have influence over you.
Alyssa, thank you, Brandon.
I'm a cancer survivor, and creativity has always been a healing catharsis for me. And it's what helped me channel a lot of my anger, and it helps me use my lens, and it feels like a moving meditation. So creativity, I think, is really important for us to have an outlet, even as a hobby, and then therapy. So,
Facts.
yeah.
Yep.
I'm losing all my questions.
Before we move on, can I gave an esoteric answer that nobody else in this room had access to my grandfather, so you can't really use that. A practical answer is I focus on gratitude, and you may have heard the expression gratitude is an action word, right? And what does that actually mean? So when I am in it, I have a friend who reminds me to start a gratitude list. That's 10 things every day for 30 days with no repeats. And it's really easy for the first 3 or 4 days. And then after that, you're like, okay, I'm grateful for socks. And I'm grateful that my daughter filled up the gas tank. Like you have to, and then by like day 7, because you can't repeat, I'm walking through my day thinking about things that I need. They're like, oh, that happened. I'm going to put it on my gratitude list. Ooh, I bumped into that person and they said something. I'm going to put, and so I'm walking through my day thinking about what I could put on tomorrow's gratitude list, and all of a sudden, throughout the day, I'm smiling because I'm like, oh, right, I've got these things, and that's where that gratitude becomes an action, and that 99 out of 100 times will pull me out of the...
I also think don't get sucked down the rabbit hole. I mean, it is so easy to doom scroll, and I will say in the last probably 6 months, I've been very intentional about like when I go on my personal handle, which is Lindsay Pinchuk, and when I go on my work handle, which is Dear Found Her. And on Dear Found Her, I will not tap or touch anything that has to do with anti-Semitism or Israel, because I don't want that to be the algorithm over there. It's all about marketing and business and female founders. And I'm really intentional when I show up on Lindsay Pinchuk, and I have to be in the right mindset to do it. And so like to have those boundaries, don't you think, is like very important? Like you can be sitting and scrolling forever. Don't.
Yes.
You want to
I don't
speak
have
more to
that
that?
boundary.
Brandon was very quick to just chime in.
Listen, I mean, again, it just speaks to we sometimes aren't aware how much control something has over us. And with social media, it's one of those things that if you are not using it in the proper way, it's going to use you, and it's going to make you feel like absolute garbage.
Yeah. Benji, can you share a story where someone speaking up, where someone speaking up actually worked, where you changed someone's mind or you prevented a real harm situation? You told me you had one, and so I don't know if we're thinking of. I don't.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So.
And what made a difference?
Yeah, so this was actually early on in advocacy after October 7th, and again, I mentioned it earlier. The videos that I was making was specifically answering the questions that people were asking me, and a woman said to me, thank you for answering that, because my daughter came home from college and asked that question, and I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm helping this woman answer, and I'm grateful that a lot of the conversations have really focused around that. But you mentioned I have this program called Storied, where we focus on the Jewish contribution to music, and there's a woman who was the bass player in the last couple of shows that we did, and she called me up and said, I want to do more than be your bass player, I want to be your music director. And I was like, okay, don't take this the wrong way, but you're a 27-year-old lesbian who lives in the most liberal city in the metro area, and you're not Jewish. You're going to ruffle feathers with your friends by being a music director for me. Like, are you sure you want to do this? And she said, I've heard your scripts, I've heard what you say, I listen to the words that you use, and I follow you, and I'm listening. if I ruffle feathers in my community, that's a them problem, not a me problem. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is the perfect, she's an ally, she's an advocate. And I'll shorten a much longer story, but she hired a musician. We're doing a show in 2 weeks called The Jewish Women's Contribution to Music, the Herstory Session, and she hired a bass player who quit right before we were doing the band practices, and she quit because she found my social media and said, this guy's a Zionist, and he's a genocider, and he's a apartheid, and the whole thing. And Elise called me and was like, I'm embarrassed that my friend quit the band. And I said, don't be, move on, just find another bass player. And it was a long conversation where she was like hurt and insulted and frustrated. And at the end she goes, is this what anti-Semitism feels like? And I go, yeah. She goes, this fucking sucks, man. And I was like, welcome to the club, Melissa, you're in. Yeah. That is not the focus. My focus is that Elise, I called her Elisa, my focus is that Elise hears what we say and says, I'm aligned with that, even though she's on paper not part of the community.
Alyssa, I think you said you had a story about that too, where you spoke up and you actually changed someone's mind.
My focus again is on BDS. Most women focus on Birkins. I am like, the BDS movement is the hill I will die on. There was another resolution that came across my desk. It was false claims of genocide. And I spoke out in the rules committee before the bill hit the full committee, and we were able to withdraw it. And it was me, it was a community leader, a Vanderbilt professor, and it's impactful when we continue to use our voice and speak up in local rooms. I think that's the biggest impact that we can make.
Brandon, before you decide what to say, how do you make that determination? Is there something that holds you back? Do you take time? How do you decide what your messaging is going to be? Are you afraid?
I think I'm very calculated in a way where I don't necessarily feel the need to be perfect, but I know that my words have meaning. And people are going to receive something from that. And I've just learned I don't need to be everything to everybody, but I just need to be me. And as long as I kind of have a level of moral clarity, I think that's everything.
Yeah.
At a time where we as influencers or content creators, however you want to call it, are asked to kind of speak on everything to everyone at all times. I don't do that. I don't believe in that. I don't think it's effective either.
I agree. I'm going to have each of you answer this question, and then we're going to take some from the audience. I'm going to go through them. So for someone in this room who's never spoken up before, what is the smallest, most concrete first step that they can take right now? Today, this week, now. Brandon, I'm going to start with you.
Ask yourself what you are fighting for. Because I think it's also very quick to say, oh, I'm going to become an activist. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to try and change the world. And it's so easy to just burn out doing that. And you don't have really a compass guiding you. So I think getting clear on what exactly you want to do. And obviously, when it comes to anti-Semitism, specifically, there are different lanes. There are different routes that you could take. If you're a student, you could focus on specifically anti-Semitism in schools. Figuring out what you've been given and how you could use that to better the world, I think is where it starts.
Thank you. Benji.
I remember when I was 7 or 8 years old, somebody in synagogue asked me what I was going to be when I grew up. And my grandfather said, don't answer that question. And I said, why not? He said, you can do whatever you want. You can be whatever you want to be as long as you do it like a mensch. And I think that is the answer to advocacy in the average, the normal people, the people who are I don't have a big social media influence. I don't have, step one is you're a mensch. And when people see you acting like a mensch, it's very hard to say those evil Zionists, when those evil Zionists is you acting like a mensch. Sure, that was for my grandfather. But if you're going to post, the answer is what I said earlier, is be yourself. right? You don't have to reinvent who you are to be an advocate. You can say, this is the reason why I'm a Zionist is because of this. The reason why I believe in Israel. The reason why I'm Jewish. The reason why I'm a proud Jew. You could just tell the story of who you are and be yourself. You don't have to be the ADL. You don't have to have an organization behind you to tell your story to if you have 100 followers and those are the people that you go to school with and your family members, that's 100 people who want to know why Zionism is important to you and why Judaism is important to you or why baseball is important to you. And so I think it's just be a mensch and be yourself, assuming that yourself is a mensch. So, yeah.
Alyssa?
Concrete steps you can take. Understand who your Metro City Council members are. Recognize again if your state's adopted IRA, anti-BDS legislation. See who specifically sponsors it. Reach out to whoever sponsored it and thank them. Introduce yourselves to them. And then mobilize community. I think that's really important. Get involved in your Jewish organizations in your own cities. And also invest in your Jewish joy and Jewish education. I think that's really important.
So before I move into the audience questions, I just want to kind of recap. I've been jotting down a couple of just quick things that we can take away from these amazing panelists. So you want to choose your focus and be focused. You want to be yourself. You want to lead with humanity. And I think one of the most important things for offline is really understanding your local community and your local government. And I think those are very simple things, right, that we all in this room can do. It is not hard, and it's really just one baby step at a time.
And doesn't require any editing skills.
Yes, no editing skills. You don't even know how to use. You don't need to know how to use Instagram even to do any of those things. So these are some really good questions, guys. There's a lot of questions, and I know some of them have been directed very specifically. So if we don't get to them, I'm going to give them to the panelists, and I think you should answer them on your social media.
Great.
So if we don't get to all of them. So, okay, this is for the teens in the audience. How would you tell them to respond if they make or share a post and then get a troll? What would be the best way to respond? Do you want to talk about that, Brandon?
Yeah. This goes back to choosing where to put your focus. It's really pointless, in my opinion, to get into any sort of dialogue with 99% of people that are trolling because they're looking for a response. They're looking to get something out of you, and often that's nothing productive. So just also knowing it's not your fight. What you said before, I really liked. It's not your fight to have to show up for every single time. Let them.
I also think if you're a student and someone trolls you, especially if it's someone you know and it's public, let it sit on your account. Don't hide it. Don't remove it. Let other people see their true colors. You know, I mean, people don't realize that words matter, and people do see things visibly. So let them be I'm not going to swear here. Let them be the jerk. You know?
Swear.
I know you swore, and that's okay. That's okay. I swear online all the time. I think everyone's heard it. Does anyone have anything else they want to add about that? What to tell a teen or a student? And Benji, you have a teenage daughter.
I have two teenage daughters, and you know, I'm going to sound like my mother, and that's painful for me. I dealt with bullying not on social media because that didn't exist when I was in high school or in grade school. The idea that somebody would come to your page and say nasty things just for the purpose of being nasty, which I now get, but I'm not a teenager, they are living such a sad, pathetic existence that brings them any sort of happiness or joy. Like Lindsay said, let it sit there and let other people see that you responded nothing, or if you feel compelled to respond, you could say something like, I'm so sorry that you felt the need to say that.
Just adopt a Southern response and say, bless your heart. And
yes, yes, perfect. That's perfect, right? There is nothing more aggravating to a nasty person than your smile.
Yep.
And that was the conversation we were having was, but I want to get into
bless
it with
your
them.
heart. Done.
It's done. Have a great day.
The other thing I sometimes say if someone's really being I'll say thank you so much. I just made a donation to the ADL to end Jew hatred, or in your honor.
Absolutely.
And I say that all the time. You know? I mean, I donate all the time everywhere. So, like, I mean, and people, I think that does get them to shut up, to be very honest.
Right.
This is a really good question also. And Alyssa, I'm going to actually direct it to you. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's long. But basically, this person is the founder and a global leader of a large tech company. And they want to put out that they're Jewish on LinkedIn and show others the Jewish strength, but they are very afraid to do so. And they want to know, what advice do you have for someone like me who lives in the San Francisco Bay Area, has stood up, but has still been afraid to put it on social media in a professional way?
I think what unites us all is our resilience and our tradition and our heritage and our culture. And I think start there. Start with our humanity. That is the way forward, in my opinion, and not be defensive or reactive or lead with anger. Gut check yourself and say, what makes me proud about where I come from and how deep my roots are? And illustrate that, you know, what you focus on expands and grows, and same thing, the seeds you plant also grow in that capacity.
You can post about being Jewish without posting about anything controversial. That's who you are.
But also, it's a human
Yeah.
conflict right now, and we don't need to politicize it. And it's leading with our humanity.
Agree.
And specific to LinkedIn, you can be subtle in talking about Judaism. You can say, I attended the ADL conference in New York, right, and talk about going to the ADL conference to fight anti-Semitism. And maybe that's obvious to some people that you're Jewish, and maybe that's not obvious. But if you post, you know, I got involved with Stand With Us, right? And you start posting those things on LinkedIn as opposed to saying, hey, LinkedIn, I'm Jewish, do business. Like, I probably wouldn't do that. I wouldn't suggest doing that. But you can make your posts infused with Judaism, and that is how you can have that conversation.
Also, truth is our shield, and there's no disputing facts. So,
I mean, and a great post, like to tag along to what you just said, Benji, is I went to the ADL conference in New York, and here are 3 takeaways.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Here are 3 takeaways that I learned from my 2 days in New York at the Anti-Defamation League.
That's my post for Monday.
Great. Tag us in your post, guys.
Something else I just wanted to add, and maybe this is slightly controversial. I think it's a good litmus test. You know what? If somebody's going to unfollow me, or if somebody's not going to do business with me because I'm Jewish and I'm posting about my identity and who I am, okay, I mean, obviously, like, that affects my business and whatever. I'm not going to say that it doesn't hurt, but I would way rather that person leave me now than find out later on that they're anti-Semitic or they want nothing to do with me because I'm Jewish.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with that. Thank you. Where do you guys get your information from?
A host of places, not TikTok. I look for people who I know are reliable, relevant to news in Israel. I lean on Johnny Daniels a lot. And I'm, of course, drawing a blank because now I started talking. But Johnny, he's a big, but I look for people that I trust who are always going to talk about facts. You're one that I look for when things are going on, you know, and so if I see a stranger's video, I assume that it's not accurate until I verify it. But Johnny Daniels, if you don't follow him, you should. He's spot on.
And I know that the news is a very sore subject right now, and the headlines are very misleading and often horrible. But I will say, Mo News I get all my news from Mo. He was here. Kudos to Mo. Okay, he was here yesterday. I think I saw him running around today too. I think they do an amazing job being unbiased, and he reports the news as it actually happens and should be reported. And Honest Reporting was also here yesterday, and they do an amazing job too, and they do a great job debunking everything. Anything else you guys want to add?
I love Maddie Friedman. He's phenomenal, and I like understanding what's going on. And Haviv Redagor is phenomenal. Haviv Redagor.
Haviv
Redagor. I want to know independent journalists who are within the conflict and understand.
No, I'm one of them.
What?
I know I was just talking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not trying to take away.
No, that's okay. Brandon, do you have anything you want to add there?
The only thing, my mom is sitting in the front row, so this is not a jab to my mom at all, but I just think before we send something, before we send a post, or before we send an article, let's just do a 5-second check on Google to see if it is real. And I'm telling you, that would help, Mom. So
That was a jab, dude. That was a jab.
You know, on that note, I'm going to echo something that Tessa said. Tessa Vexler. Tessa, you're getting a lot of airtime right now. That Tessa said something yesterday in our panel that we did, and she said, before you post something, just pause, and make sure that it's correct. Make sure that you are ready for what might come your way when you share it. It doesn't have to be immediate. And I think a lot of times people think like, oh, I gotta be the first, or I gotta share it now. No, you don't.
Right.
Like, just make sure that it's right, make sure it's accurate, make sure you feel good about it, and it's representative of you.
100%.
All right, this is a good question. As a senior citizen representing an untapped asset, since we have lots of time to be online, what can we do to best address anti-Semitism via posting online? Alyssa, do you want to take that?
Create or amplify those who are. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty simple. Online, create your own or amplify those who are already doing it that you respect and trust.
Right.
When I have conversations, I'm often asked for we just answered this, sorry. This is a good one. If we see hate in school, how should we combat it? I can share a story if you guys want me to.
Please.
Okay, so a couple weeks ago, my daughter, my 12-year-old, and I'm so proud of her that she recognized this. She came home and she said, Mom, there was a girl in my class wearing a sweatshirt that said, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And she said, I know that that is not good. And I know that from you. And this is why I do what I do. So to me, this was like music to my ears. So I emailed the principal, and I copied the vice principals, and it was a very good email, and I keep saying I gotta get it so you guys can download it because it was a very effective email, but essentially it said, this is what happened, this is, Congress marked this as anti-Semitic, this is against the rules of the school board, and what are you going to be doing about it? Because my daughter does not feel safe in school. That was it, and within 24 hours, I got an answer back that said, the family has been talked to, we are not allowing this in our school, you do have nothing to worry about, and if you see it again, let us know. It was a very simple answer. Thank you. But I bring it up because I think a lot of parents don't know where to start, and you have to start with the administration. And if you don't get an answer from the principal, go above the principal. Mm-hmm. Go to the superintendent, go to the school board. This is a violation of the law. My child didn't feel safe, and yours don't either when they see that. And so it's up to us to advocate on their behalf.
And don't take no for an answer.
Yes.
Yeah. Because they're going to deny culpability, say it happened outside of school hours, all this BS.
This did not happen outside of school hours, but
Well,
yes.
other scenarios for sure. But yeah, it's vital that we push back.
Yes, Benji.
I want to say I've spent a lot of time in this on the special needs side, not on the Jewish and Israel side, but in the months after October 7th, I've got a daughter who's 15 who's got special needs, and you may have seen or heard in Michigan there's school walkouts, and there was high schoolers and middle schoolers who were participating in these school walkouts and days of rage and things like that were being organized. And I went to the principal and I said, hey, I've got a daughter who's nonverbal, who's in this school, who can't defend herself. How are you going to make sure that my daughter, who has worn Stars of David and Hamsas and Jewish shirts, and how are you going to ensure that my daughter is safe? And his response to me was, you either trust that we're going to keep your daughter safe, or you don't. But I'm not going to explain to you how we're going to do it. And if you don't trust, you should send her to another school.
Wow.
And I said, okay, I'm going to pause before I respond. And we walked out of that meeting, and the teacher came over to me and said, I find what he said appalling. I want you to know that your daughter will never be alone without me, another teacher, or an aide. Moving forward, it's never going to happen. And I don't know what the principal has, but that's what I've got. And I was so grateful that she was there, because I don't know what the answer that I would have responded. Like there was nothing, but the advocacy that you're talking about, sometimes you have to go over the principal, sometimes you go, I've made superintendents cry. It was a great day. I would love to tell you that story. Like foul language was involved, you know. Sometimes you got to go over the principal, sometimes you got to go under the principal. And that conversation in the classroom with the teacher can be just as, if not more effective than going up.
Thank you. So we're almost just out of time. I would love for each of you to share one sentence with the audience, that a takeaway, a leave behind, a gem of information, just one little thing about advocating and standing up. Brandon, do you want to go first?
I want Alyssa to go first.
Okay, Alyssa, you're going to go first.
Gotta think about this.
Great. If we can't find a way, we forge a way forward, and we fight together, always. And I share that. I was at a recent conference, and somebody who was speaking, his son's in the IDF and fighting right now, and that's what their commander said. And so I just wanted to pass that forward to us.
Thank you. Benji?
I would say that we're all advocates, regardless of the size of your social media following. We're all doing this, and your greatest asset in fighting anti-Semitism is being a mensch.
Brandon?
I would say always remember how much power your voice carries.
Thank you. And I would say it is never wrong to do what's right. So stand up and speak out. Let's thank our amazing panelists, Alyssa Rosenek, Benji Rosenzweig, Brandon Farbstein, and thank you for spending your morning with all of us.
Thank you all so much.